Hello and welcome to the New Look Raw Chatter. Yes, I've had a little bit of a reposition after I went to an event in Manchester called The Big Festoon, and it just gave me that little push to do something that I've been thinking about since November, and that is repositioning what I do and how people know me, basically because I've recognized that I'm not necessarily sharing and talking about myself in the way that I deserve to share and talk about myself to help as many people as I possibly can. So the podcast now is going to be covering unfiltered, so still raw stuff, still the stuff nobody else talks about, but it's going to be all about the psychology of addiction, behavior, and high performance. And so today I want to talk about why you, as a high performer or a high performing professional, whether you are a business owner, a CEO, whether you are an entrepreneur, or you are in a professional capacity, really working hard, but recognizing that you are not necessarily having the quality of life that you want, and you are still feeling a little bit meh a lot of the time. And what I want to share with you on this podcast episode is that you don't have a motivation problem, but you do have a coping strategy problem. Now, so many people that I speak to, especially since the beginning of the year, are talking about the fact that there's just this underlying feeling of fatigue. And maybe you can resonate with this. Maybe you had a full-on pre-Christmas period, and then if Christmas itself was really hectic with work deadlines and with socializing and with family commitments, and then we get into January, and the way that things have panned out in the first few months of the year, it's been different for, I think, all of us. AI literally seems like it's come out of nowhere. And of course it hasn't. AI has been slowly but steadily creeping in since 2022. It's just that most of us didn't necessarily notice just how much it was coming in and just what it was going to be able to do. So fast forward basically 4 years, and here we are, people panicking about their jobs and just what will it mean for them. Now, I think the general consensus of opinion is, like for most things, it's not going to have the disastrous effect that a lot of us think it may have. But without a shadow of a doubt, it does change things. One thing that it doesn't change is how we function, feel, think as humans. And I still will stand by what I have said quite a few times recently. Most of us know how this thing in our pockets works better than how this works. So many people still separate mental and physical health, and your head isn't separate, it's attached to your body. So your physical well-being is going to affect your mental health. Your mental health, the way that you think, your perceptions, your programming, and how your brain is working is without shadow of a doubt going to affect your physical health. It can't not, because everything is interconnected, intertwined, and everything that we do, think, feel, say, what we're surrounded by, the stuff that we take in terms of what we listen to, what we watch, what we hear, as well as the nutrition, food and drink that we put into our bodies, all of those things are going to affect just what is going on for us. They're not separate. They never were. We separate things in this misaligned belief that if we look at things separately, we'll be able to understand them better. But actually, it just ends up confusing people even more, because now there is the belief that things are separate. And there is nothing in your body that works in isolation. There is nothing in your brain that works in isolation. Your brain, your gut are connected. Your brain and your heart are massively connected. Your heart and your head are connected. And all of these things play a role in just how we feel, think, and function. And that is what I'm all about, folks. Your behaviors are based upon the thoughts that we have, and then what we perceive those thoughts to mean, how we interpret them based upon our programming. And that then leads to a certain feeling. That feeling then will determine our behavior. And the behavior that we then decide to action or not action will affect how we feel and therefore how we think. And this is a cycle that is never ending. It is going on all of the time. Even if you're not aware of it, it is happening. And so when people say that they're tired or they're just fatigued all of the time and they struggle to get motivated, even though they know that they have got a lot of things that are on their to-do list that they have to get done. Maybe there's deadlines looming. There is always pressure, family commitments. More and more people are deciding in terms of finances, just where are they going to prioritize the money that they are spending and on what and whom. So what we do is we blame motivation. I just need to get more motivated, right? Things like going out for a walk, things like getting some fresh air, things like looking after yourself in terms of making meals from scratch and cooking rather than just picking up your phone and ordering a delivery meal. Things like that we think require motivation, but actually, motivation comes from action. And I know it seems backwards because you think, well, I need motivation to take action. No, you don't. What we need is discipline. Discipline helps us to take action, and action is what gives us the motivation. Because when we actually start doing something, that is when we have the motivation to continue to do that thing or to go do something else if that thing isn't actually what you were wanting to do in and of that moment. Motivation is without a shadow of a doubt led by the actions that we take and what those actions then give us in terms of feedback. What do I mean by that? When you start doing something, you will create a cascade of feelings or thoughts. And they will either be, oh, this is great, I'm really enjoying it. Or they may be, God, this is tedious. How much longer is it going to take? Now, either which way, you have a choice, right? You can either keep going or you can choose to do something else. Now, if you've got deadlines and if you've got pressures, then obviously there are some things where you don't necessarily have that choice. But how you look at the task when you're taking the action will very, very much determine whether our motivation is high or whether our motivation is low. Now, what a lot of us do, and this is where those of you who do this will be going, yep, that's me, is if you are starting to do a task and you're taking action because you get it that you need to take action to be motivated. To get the motivation, you have to take action. Action equals motivation. You go, yeah, I've got it, I get it, I'm doing it. But what you then may find yourself doing is just deciding that you need a wee. Or just deciding that actually you need to go downstairs if your office is upstairs and get a glass of water. Or if you're in an office situation, you need to just go to the kitchen area or the communal area where there is food and drink available. And before you know it, what have you done? You've distracted yourself. You're in a conversation and your brain is kind of going, we should be doing that thing. We should be doing that thing. And then what kicks in? A sense of guilt that you are now spending time doing something else that is not the thing that you know you're supposed to be doing. And the motivation dips again because you're enjoying doing this thing more than the other thing. So distraction is without a shadow of a doubt not a great coping strategy, but it's one available to us all. And this thing is our top distraction factor, isn't it? Why? Because normally we can literally reach out and grab it. We tend to keep it. Some people keep it actually on them in terms of it goes in their back pocket. Some people have it on their desk beside them. And if you know that motivation, or you believe that motivation for you is an issue, but every 2 minutes you are deciding that you're going to just scroll, see what you're missing on Instagram or TikTok or on Facebook, or you're telling yourself, oh, just before I start this task, I just need to check my emails, then you are going to, without shadow of a doubt, keep losing that motivation, which reinforces this idea that you think you have a motivation problem, but you don't. You have a coping strategy problem because all of us have to do things that we don't particularly enjoy. Now, there are some tasks that we absolutely love and we look forward to. And this is where we've got to recognize that if we get bogged down in trying to wait for motivation, we are just going to keep on distracting ourselves. What we need to recognize is that a lot of us who are high performers will turn to food as a reward or an incentive to do things. And this is where it becomes an issue. And this is what I mean when I say we have a coping strategy problem. Because if you're following the old theory, which we've proven is not a great theory of the carrot and the stick, if you are using as your carrot, if I do this, I can have a bottle of wine or a glass of wine. Now, I'm saying bottle or glass because for some people it ends up being a bottle seems to be the norm. Now, some of you listening who have never drunk very much may well be going, that's ridiculous. She's made a mistake. She means just a glass. No, there's a lot of people who genuinely do drink a bottle of wine a night and think that that is normal because they drink it over a number of hours. Perhaps it starts when they come in from work, they open the bottle, they have a glass, and then they do prepare the food from scratch. And you've got the glass there and you're chopping and you're tasting and you're sipping the wine as you're doing that. Then you actually sit down and maybe you have one or a couple of glasses with your meal. And then maybe you're relaxing, watching some Netflix or something for an hour. And before you know it, that bottle is gone. So it's not difficult for somebody to get through a bottle of wine if that is the process. And it's very easy for that kind of pattern to become just a habit. This is what I do. This is how I wind down. This is how I make sure that I do always cook from scratch and I am relaxing at the end of the day. But where is your mind? Is your mind even on tasting this thing that you're putting inside your body? Alcohol is absolutely going to affect how your gut functions. Your gut will determine the hormones that are available for use. They will very much, your gut will definitely determine how well your digestive process was working. And unfortunately, alcohol annihilates that single cell lining of your gut, which means that you're very much leaving yourself open to getting something called leaky gut. And in simple terms, what does that mean? It means that your gut ends up, the very thin, it's like one cell thick gut lining gets minuscule little perforations in it. And that allows stuff through that should not get through, which can then further along down the line, it's a compound effect, lead to inflammation, autoimmune issues. And what does that mean in real terms? Well, inflammation is a classic thing when it comes to migraines and back pain. So we may not necessarily put two and two together, that bottle of wine that helps you to relax and chill out in the evening every night is actually the reason why you're having back pain or regular migraines. Now, I'm not saying it's the cause, but I'm saying that there is absolutely a correlation and you would be remiss not to look at that as a possible factor. Inflammation, things like arthritis, particularly when we're thinking about in ankles, in knees, in the major joints, right, is usually started off with inflammation, and that is usually linked to this leaky gut idea where the gut lining has been compromised. And one of the things that does it and does it very quickly over time is regular intake of alcohol. Now, do we need to not relax and utilize alcohol to wind down? No, of course not. I'm not saying that. I don't drink because I absolutely had a very powerful alcohol dependence. Some of you have heard my story. I'm not going to repeat it now, but I was what we kind of refer to as a functioning alcoholic. But I was running on copious amounts of wine and beer and caffeine and nicotine. That was pretty much what I ran on for a number of years, over a decade plus, not quite two, but nearly. And as a result, I was very much vitamin and mineral deficient. I have, as a result of that, now got 3 autoimmune issues that I have to manage so that they do not get any worse. I don't think they're going to completely disappear, but I don't want them to get any worse. So I'm taking all of the steps that I can. Now, and these were my coping strategies. So alcohol, not eating, but smoking, drinking caffeine were coping strategies for me. And they are for so many professionals and high performers. If you haven't got time to sit down and have lunch, but if you grab a quick coffee and a cigarette, it will dampen down your appetite for a short period of time. Now, is there on the other end the opposite way of doing it? If you are missing lunch and you're telling yourself you haven't got time to sit down for a proper meal, it may well be that your coping strategy behavior is to stop in at a coffee shop and grab a takeaway muffin or croissant or rich pastry and a coffee. And that again is going to absolutely play havoc with your energy levels, with your focus, and with your ability to make decisions. And you may be thinking, well, why is decision making linked to that? Well, it's very simple. If we are not running our body and our brain on great nutrition, it will absolutely affect how our body and brain works. It affects something called the neurotransmitters, and they determine our mood and our response to things. And normally, if we have got a diet that is low in nutrients, low in vitamins and minerals, as well as the important major nutrients, the proteins, the fats, and of course the carbohydrates, the ones that are fibrous and full of nutrients, not the ones that are empty and full of sugar and flour, then it's going to affect our brain function, our decision-making abilities. Now, is it noticeably slower? Not necessarily. But it may well be that this is where you then get confused with lack of motivation and procrastination, for example. That affects your ability to make decisions without a shadow of a doubt. Because what we do know is that perfectionism, procrastination, and lack of motivation due to fatigue are all interconnected, intertwined. Where does one start, one stop, one begin? We don't know. The chances are that they are all part and parcel of the same thinking and behavior process. And for many people, this pattern of just grabbing on the go, of not eating properly during the day and maybe overeating then in the evening, because that's the only chance that you get to actually sit down and eat a proper meal, is very, very common. And over time, it is absolutely going to make it harder and harder for you to feel energized, for you to feel motivated. And what do? If we're not feeling energized and we're not feeling motivated, then we will reach for something that will help us in the short term. And this is what I mean by a coping strategy. It may not be food or drink. It may be your phone. It may be that you are utilizing medication, either prescribed or not. It may be that you are utilizing recreational drugs and you're finding that you need them more frequently or you need a bigger amount to get the same effect. Now, I'm not in any way, shape, or form going to call anybody out and fall down that road of stigmatizing any of these things, because it doesn't matter what it's dressed up in, right? Whether it is a shopping addiction, whether it is gambling, rather than thinking of it necessarily as a bad thing, just recognize it for what it is. You have found something that helps you to get through what you feel you need to get through in a day, with all of the pressures that brings. And you're not alone, right? There's so many people who are living day in, day out like this. And once this becomes a way of living, it almost becomes your identity. It's like, this is just who I am. This is what I do. And I'm sure many of you can relate to that. But what we need to recognize is that if we continue to keep doing this, over time, there is a negative compound effect. There is a cost. There is a cost in terms of how your body is working and how your brain is functioning. So we need to have an awareness that these coping strategies can have a place. But if they become something that we need to do, that we have to do multiple times a day just to be able to keep on functioning in a way that we are familiar with, which is not necessarily optimal or the best version of ourselves, then we need to look at what can we do instead? What is it actually underneath me searching for that coping strategy that I need to turn into? And it's going to be usually the story that you're telling yourself about the shoulds, the musts, the have tos, the ought tos. It is the expectations that you are putting upon yourself or that you feel are being put upon you, which may or may not be true. It is the stories that you are telling yourself, your perceptions, your interpretations of what things mean, either about yourself, other people, or how you are living and being. And this awareness is the first step to help you to recognize that you need to change your coping strategies, because when you do, you will find that it's much easier to take the action that is required to keep you motivated, and more importantly, to actually enjoy your life. Because ultimately, we only have one life, as far as I know, and one body. And I implore you, start taking care of it, because it is taking care of you. Now, if there's anything that I have shared here, please give me a thumbs up, give me a like, give me a subscribe. If you are watching on Apple or Spotify, hit that follow button. And if this has been helpful to you in any way, or you think it may be helpful to somebody else, please pass the link on to them, but also leave a comment. Subscribe to my newsletter and keep abreast of the stuff that I am doing, and reach out if you feel you want to. And let's have a conversation about your coping strategies and just how simple and straightforward it can be to change them when you understand what you are doing and why you are doing it in the first place. Because change does not have to be as hard as you think when you start in the right place for you and your lifestyle. So until next time, thank you so much for listening. Please do take care of yourselves. Don't forget, sign up for that newsletter, hit subscribe. Bye-bye now.